Fandoms Anonymous.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Fandom Talk presented by Fandoms Anonymous. Man, we are here today. There's a lot to talk about, so we're not going to waste too much of your time. We're going to get right into it. I got my favorite guys on the line. What's going on, Mr. Kevin Garlington?
Hey, what's up? Ready to talk this movie talk?
What's going on? What's going on? I got my man from B Terrible Productions out of Pensacola, Florida, Mr. Jeremy Branch. What's going on, Jay?
What's going on, everybody? Happy to be back for another episode. Look forward to Wednesdays. And, we got a couple of nice trailers this week that we're going to talk about.
Most definitely. We got some good ones, got some bad ones, got some in-between ones, and got some other news up and around everything to talk about today. So let's get right into it. First thing on the list is this R-rated Venom movie. So Sony has decided to go ahead and do Venom. It's not going to be connected to the MCU, so a lot of people are discussing that. So, Kevin, what's your first thought on this R-rated Venom movie?
Let me separate this in saying I'm going to talk about the Venom R-rated movie premise itself, and then I'll talk about the studio that's doing it. For those that may not know, Venom is a character, created by Todd McFarlane when he was doing his run at Marvel. That obviously you can see the Todd McFarlane DNA in the character. If you look at the Violator, look at Spawn, look at Venom, they all kind of have that Todd McFarlane DNA. If you look at this character and you know the story arcs, there is a story arc where Venom leaves New York and he moves to San Francisco, this is the Eddie Brock Venom we're talking about, not Flash Thompson and not Matt Gorgon, who is also the Scorpion. Talking about Eddie Brock, the original Venom. He moves to San Francisco and he becomes an anti-hero. And he's there kind of protecting the homeless people and just protecting the city. Where Spider-Man doesn't kill people and he sends them to the police, Venom kills people. Oh, and the symbiote gets sick and starts to crave human brains. He's out killing criminals and he'll bust their head open and eat their brain. Okay? There is a lot here. Carnage, which is a super villain from the Marvel Comics universe, who is a spawn of Venom, or his son, as he calls him sometime, if you will, in the comic books, is a mass murderer who kills a lot of people in comic books. So the R rating, to me, for a Venom movie is justified. It's not, because the one thing that I think we all were worried about is Deadpool came out, had a rated R, it was rated R, and we were saying, okay, studios, this doesn't mean you need to make everything rated R. This isn't one of those properties, but I think that if you know the stories and you could see how this could be and probably should be rated R. Case in point, Spider-Man 3. Now, we know Sam Raimi historically did not like Venom, didn't want to put him in the movie. Sam Raimi was not reading comic books when Venom came around in the late 80s. If you look at Sam Raimi's run, his Spider-Man movies feature villains from the first 6 issues, if you will, of Spider-Man, pretty much, if I'm not mistaken about that. So Avi Arad, which used to be over at Marvel, now they kicked him out of Marvel, and he's over at Sony with the Spider-Man property, forced him to put Venom in the movie. If you look at the PG-13 kind of Spider-Man that we had over there with Tobey Maguire, it's very similar to the MCU. If you look at the aesthetics over there, Venom did not fit in that aesthetic. And unfortunately, I don't think Venom is a character who needs to be in the MCU, because I don't know if you're going to get the real Venom that you need. Now, so I'm cool with a rated R Venom. I'm not cool with Sony doing it.
Really?
I just don't think Sony has I don't think Sony has a track record to really pull this off. They really make me nervous about this. The only good thing I heard about this week was, and Jeremy, help me out with the guy's name, because I don't know how to pronounce it.
I think it's Adi Shankar.
Yeah, Ari Shankar, the guy that did the Power Dash Rangers short, and then he did a short with Venom also, by the way. It's called Truth in Journalism. And it's actually, the guy that played Jason in True Blood actually plays Eddie Brock. He turns into Venom. The black and white deal is actually pretty cool. He is the only piece of good news I heard about this week. The release date for this movie is supposed to be October 5th of 2018. We don't have a director. We don't have an Eddie Brock, and nobody said anything about a script. This is all the makings of them trying to fast-track something that needs time to breathe and to be fleshed out. And that's why I don't trust Sony making this movie. And I'll pass it on to Jay now because I talked long enough.
Damn, dude, that is a lot to chew on. Yeah, I mean, you said so much of it right on. Let me try to, like, kind of follow the same theme and say, like, Todd McFarlane is one of my favorite comic book, artists. He's a great writer. Mm-hmm. He kind of was right there in that sweet spot of when I was really into comic books, and when he introduced Venom into the Spider-Man series, it was like what I thought was the perfect villain. It was the perfect fold for Spider-Man. I really like the way he looked. When you said that about the Violator and Spawn, and you just like kind of mashed them up, you've got Venom, which I think is kind of cool. So the DNA is there. And then if you look at Spawn's cape and you look at what Todd McFarlane was doing with Batman when he was drawing for Batman, you can see that he like brought all of these elements together to create Spawn, which was literally my favorite comic book series. So love the character. I think that, Kevin, you actually kind of put it into perspective in a way how well Venom can work as a R-rated property. I didn't even know that about the symbiote craving the brains and all of that. That's some pretty dark stuff, especially for Spider-Man, who is a title that is, and even independent from what we know in the movie versions and the comic books. It's a pretty middle of the road, pretty down the middle as far as not being excessive or gory, but then again, it's not super kiddie all the time. So it's got a nice balance, but I think it does fit neatly into that PG-13 body of movie making. And I don't want to see Venom in the MCU. And that's kind of what creates this interesting, it's so vague right now. You're right. With the amount of time that they have to produce and get this film out right now, it doesn't even seem humanly possible. Yes, of course, they're trying to capitalize on the success of Logan and Deadpool prior to that, and that's why they're fast-tracking it. It's strike while the iron's hot. Get it out there while this is what people want, because these studios don't even understand, what they think that just because the trend is this, that it means that it's always going to work, and it's separate from the movie-making part of it. Like the R-rating part really doesn't have anything to do with whether or not Deadpool or Logan succeeded. They could have been R-rated movies that sucked. They happen to not be. Mm-hmm. So that's where I think that these people who make the decisions, they don't delineate the difference in those things. But I liked Avi Shankar's Truth in Journalism. I thought that was a really cool take on the character. I see how he could be R-rated. I don't really want to see him in the MCU, but at the end of the day, and this is where it almost just makes my head want to explode. It's like, how do you pull Spider-Man out of that equation? That's just where I'm hung up on.
I've got an answer for you on that, okay? Even though it still kind of relates back to Spider-Man. So that let me break this down. And Malcolm, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take your time, dog. But let me say this. The symbiote gets to Earth in the Infinity Saga. And a lot of people listening to this probably already know this. Spider-Man goes off with the people fighting the Infinity War against Thanos. His costume gets torn to shreds. He comes across this machine on a different planet that spits out a black ball. That black ball goes all over his body, and it takes on exactly the costume he was thinking. It makes that costume. It wasn't until he came back to Earth and started doing some of the evil things or whatever that he went to see. He didn't go see the Lizard like it was with Kirk Connors, like it was in the movie. He went to see Reed Richards, which is who everybody goes to see in the MCU, or in the Marvel Comics universe, and they got a problem. Reed Richards tells him, this thing is alive, you need to get it off you, okay? He goes to the bell tower. Sonic waves disrupt the symbiote. The symbiote comes off. He rejects it. It finds Eddie Brock, who already has a hate for Peter Parker. Okay? Now, that is how Venom was originally created. Eddie Brock was a journalist who made up some news reports. Peter Parker proved him wrong. He hated Peter Parker. The symbiote found him, and then they are now Venom, and they hate Spider-Man / Peter Parker. There's another origin story for this symbiote that it was created by Spider-Man's father and one other person, I can't remember who it is right now, as a cure for cancer. So this thing was created in the lab, and it would basically go over somebody's body, cure them of cancer, and then, they would be cured. So there are a couple of different ways to do this. Now, in the Amazing Spider-Man universe, you had Oscorp, which was this huge, mysterious corporation, had all these things in there. You could have put that symbiote at Oscorp and and you could take the space part of this away from it. So you could theoretically, even though it's a different universe with Spider-Man, you could theoretically go back to that Oscorp and have that symbiote in Oscorp. And then you create your Venom from there. So there's a way to do this. I'm not saying it was my favorite idea. I'm just saying the DNA is there.
Yeah, I could see that. So it's again how they're able to cherry pick one from the other. I've got to remember in the listeners that Marvel doesn't exclusively own Spider-Man. Sony still owns Spider-Man and still owns the properties. It's just that Spider-Man's allowed into the MCU, where the rest of these characters are going to have to be negotiated separately from that. So the semantics of it are weird anyways, but sorry, Malcolm.
And I'm glad you brought up Spider-Man being separated, because that was just a representative from Sony that came out and said something. I ran across it on an Instagram video, and she was doing press for Spider-Man Homecoming, and she talked about the fact of how, we're doing the movie, Marvel and Disney and Sony have all come together, and we're discussing, and to me it sounds like the relationship is getting to the point where it's going to tear early. And I don't want to say tear in a bad way, but it sounds like they're looking at, after the sequel for Spider-Man Homecoming, that they're going to separate, and they're all going to go back their separate ways. So, Kevin, I don't know if you ran across that. Did you run across that?
I did hear something about that. I wasn't sure in the details until just now, until you mentioned this. And this is what happened. This is why they went to Marvel, was to build this character up and to get this whole universe going.
Absolutely.
I think that Spider-Man sells a lot of toys, okay? He's one of the most recognizable comic book characters in the world. There is no way they're going to go rated R with Spider-Man, okay? However, I think with the Spider-Man they've created and the way Spider-Man needs to go, I just don't think Venom has a place there. He should, because to me, he's Spider-Man's greatest villain, to me. But at the same time, if you separate it out and you say, look, we got all this stuff over here we can use and we can go forward with, I can't blame Sony for doing it. I just don't trust them with the property. Hey, guys, we've seen, Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm going to be honest, to me it was a trash comic book. One of the best Marvel movies they made. So there's a lot of story with Venom and how you go forward. Who says it has to be Eddie Brock's Venom? It could be Flash Thompson, which I seriously doubt, but it could be. It could also be Matt Gargan, who was the Scorpion also, but then he ends up with the symbiote. There's a lot that could go on and a lot of ways they could spin this. I think most people are just know that one origin where the symbiote comes from, it gets the whole webbing and Venom part from have been part of Spider-Man. But I gotta say this: you could start that story after he's come from Spider-Man, and you don't have to talk about it. Because if you give me a cool movie, just like with Logan, they don't tell you what happens to the X-Men or the people that got killed or whatever. You just gave me a cool movie. You can handle that Spider-Man part with one line and move on, and if the movie's cool, it's gonna survive. Like I said, so the idea of a rated R Venom isn't bad to me. The studio that's doing it is bad. Just like, I'm going to say this, Malcolm, to your point about the studio executive, if Sony takes back Spider-Man, it will not be as good as what they're going to do with Spider-Man over at the MCU. I'm sorry. Sony can't do it, because when they were left to their own devices, they painted Jamie Foxx blue, put him in the middle of the street, and had him playing the itsy bitsy spider at a power station.
Yeah, it was a mess. They did make some good Spider-Man movies over there, though. Not taken away from them. I really like the first Spider-Man. The first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. I like the second Sam Raimi Spider-Man pretty good with Doc Ock. I didn't like it as much as the first one, honestly, but and I liked Amazing Spider-Man pretty good, the first one. But Malcolm, that's a really interesting question that it brings up. Is like, do you think that when they were sitting at the tables negotiating, that it was explicitly stated, what Kevin had alluded to, hey, we're going to help you guys kickstart this franchise. We're going to help you revive this character so that we can put him in movies A, B, and C. And then after that, y'all can, nurture, or grow it up after we've, helped nurture it and get it, healthy and things like that. Or do you think that that was kind of something that wasn't explicitly discussed and that both of them kind of walked away thinking, we've got a future with this character in the bigger picture? You know what I'm saying? Like maybe Kevin Feige was thinking, well, we're going to do these first couple of movies and then Sony's just going to hand over the reins and be like, oh, you guys got this. We'll just take a little bit of the money off of the top or whatever. And otherwise, you guys handle Spider-Man from now on. Or do you think that, when Sony was walking away, they were like, after we get Spider-Man boosted up off the ground, we're just going to kind of snake them back over from Marvel and, continue to build that universe. So it's an interesting thing to even ponder because I did hear those statements, and to me it almost sounds like the whole point was to get through those two movies. And, Sony was talking about the Sinister Six and all of these spin-offs trying to build a universe when they were doing the Tobey Maguire version, or the Andrew Garfield versions of these movies. So they could have been back-burnering a Venom movie. They could already have a script. They could already have, concept renderings of what Venom would look like or proof of concepts of what the CG will move like or any of that. We don't know how far along in development they could be behind the scenes, especially as long as, there's been these Spider-Man ideas and talks and things like that. But that conversation also goes back to the R-rated conversation of, like, how do you go back? How do you take Deadpool now and put him into a PG-13 X-Men movie? And essentially the reason why Logan and Deadpool can work so well is because they're so separated from the larger X-Men team and from what we're used to seeing in those movies. So that poses an interesting concern in itself. Is like, once you do go R-rated with them, how do you take it back to PG-13 and not tamper or hamper people's expectations of the movie or make people feel like you're watering down the character? And that's what's so interesting about all this going on at Sony right now. We've seen it happen with Warner Brothers. Kevin, you already kind of stated that you don't trust it over at Sony, and I think that the track records of any of these studios don't lie when I say that they don't know how to build cinema. They don't have the formula figured out to plug into the equation. And that's the thing, is that Marvel figured out that equation, and now they're just plugging in different things to the variables, They are switching out what subgenre it is. Is it a heist movie? Is it a space opera? Is it a movie about magic or whatever? And they're able to, what's the character that we need to cast in the lead? What's the villain that we need to put into this? And they're just basically reconfiguring the exact same formula and plugging in different variables. And I think that nobody else has that template. Nobody else has that equation, whether it's Warner Brothers, whether it's Fox. All of them have been hit or miss. And Marvel Studios is over there just like basically batting 1,000, So it's hard for other people, but everybody wants to capture that lightning in the bottle,
Right.
I guess to me it sounds like that they never let go of the premise of the Sinister Six. They never let go of the premise of Venom. They never let go of any of these premises. And Jeremy, I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying, and I feel like Kevin feels the same way. That when you said they were just, let's get this built up. Let's let Marvel make us look good, After they do, we're going to take our stuff back, and we're gonna keep on moving forward. And I feel like it'll crash and burn really fast. Once you leave once you leave that realm of that safety net, for Sony, Marvel is a safety net, a big safety net.
Oh yeah.
And once they leave that safety net, there's no telling what's going to happen. We could get another Fantastic Four just that fast. I mean, just as fast as lightning. And whenever you're talking about fast starting something, and it's what I'm hearing about the talks of this all over everywhere, nobody trusts Sony. They trust the fact that Sony can go ahead and do this R-rated because this character needs to be R-rated. But no, they don't have a track record. And it's not, guys, it's not to make it seem like we're just big Marvel fanboys. No, we're fanboys over all of this stuff. But we don't want to pay crap. We don't want to pay money to go watch crap. I did not pay money out of my own pocket to see Batman v Superman. I used my AMC rewards. I was like, I'm not paying money out of my own pocket. And I'm glad I didn't, because if I felt like if I had never had AMC rewards, or if I didn't have any type of free ticket or anything, I felt like I would have wasted money. Same thing with a lot of these other properties. Go ahead, Ken.
Can we go back to the point? Jeremy asked a really good question talking about, do we think that what the negotiation at the table was like? I really feel like the negotiation at the table had a finite amount of movies on it. And one thing I've been kind of thinking about here lately, when I talk about the negotiation, I'm talking about between Sony and Marvel, because whatever
and Disney,
whatever they came to the table with, it extends Sony's grasp on the property, if you will. If these movies don't go into production every 10 years, the rights go back to Marvel. And by the way, they only paid about $7 million for the rights for Spider-Man to Marvel back when this thing went down. I think it's one of the best deals I've ever seen in my life.
Crazy.
For this to be a billion-dollar franchise here. Well, when you sit back and you look at what possibly could go on here, remember that Disney and Marvel made Spider-Man a kid. He's in high school. This whole Marvel thing could just be Spider-Man's beginning and his high school years. You might see where when they take this thing back over, now Peter's in college, or now he's a grown man. And that what happened at the MCU will be canon, but now we're dealing with a different Spider-Man.
That's a real great take, man. I'd like to see that movie.
And that could be, where they're going with this. We have no clue. I'm just spitballing here. I'm just saying that if you're going to have somebody jumpstart something for you, they started them young and started them early, started them in the 10th grade, so they have room to grow. So you get him here, you get him in Infinity War, and then you get him, finishing up high school or whatever. Now Peter's a grown man when he comes back, and then now you get Mary Jane and dealing with all these things that a young man would deal with, which made Spider-Man so endearing in the first place. Spider-Man had to pay his rent. He's not a big
right.
So when you look at that, that's where they could be going with it. And to get the proper jump on it, what better place to go than Disney and Marvel to say, okay, you guys don't have a kid character. Here he is. Make him a kid, and then we'll go from there. Now, again, we don't know what they're going to do. We don't know how this thing is going to play out. But I can guarantee you that somebody's going to try to do some Spider-Man stuff on their own at a certain point. And if they're smart, they'll take the screenwriters, producers, and everybody over there and say, let's keep this relationship going, but this is the direction we want to go in, if they're smart. So that's my take on it.
Yeah. And that brings it all the way back around to the beginning of the conversation. It's just like, are Sony going to be able to, once Marvel lets go of the reins, are Sony going to be able to deal with the problem and then by their track records? Like we've been talking about the track record, how all we can do is speculate, and all we have is the past examples. And so far, Sony just hasn't nailed anything consistently. When they do start trying to build this larger world is when the things fall apart. We saw it with all of the villains that they introduced in Spider-Man 3. We saw it again with all of the villains they introduced in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And that's another thing. Marvel's been able to pull off that balance really well, save for one of the main complaints I have about that Spider-Man trailer, which I'm pretty sure we'll be talking about here in a second. So I'll sit on that.
Okay. Awesome.
Most definitely. Well, let's go ahead and gravitate towards that, because that is next on the list. The Spider-Man Homecoming trailer. I thoroughly enjoyed the trailer. I felt like it was the next level of what Marvel is bringing out to us and branching out to us in regards to the MCU. I enjoyed seeing Michael Keaton. I liked seeing him with the old school Vulture comic book ruffles around his neck. I thought that was a good taste and touch as well. And I'm just excited for this movie overall. Jeremy, what was your take on the Spider-Man Homecoming trailer?
Man, I loved it. It's so good. It's so good. Like you said about the collar on the Vulture, it's so dope how the costume designers of this new Marvel Cinematic Universe are able to take all sorts of creative liberties, do some things totally different, but then just give you that one little nod that's like, hey, this is unmistakably the Vulture, because the one thing you remember is that he wore the green on his body, and then he had that little feathery ruffle collar thing. Well, in the new movie, Michael Keaton's wearing all green, and he's got the little ruffle thing around his neck. So I agree that's a cool little touch. But we get to see Michael Keaton acting in this trailer, which is great, because a lot of people are always talking about, underdeveloped villains in Marvel. So maybe this will kind of quell that criticism. Maybe Michael Keaton can be something that becomes a fixture in the Spider-Man universe. I really hope he doesn't die in this first movie. But, yeah, man, there's so many great shots in the trailer. One of the things that I really like, I've mentioned it before, is how his suit is almost like vacuum sealed. It'll be like loose, and then he presses the little spider button and it sucks up around his body. I think that's a cool little touch. And then apparently he's got a little tracking drone on his spider emblem on the trailer, which is something I didn't see until this time around. Let's see, we got to see a shot of the Shocker, and that was really cool to see him blast through that bus. And then there's a huge set piece on the ferry, which I feel, as many superheroes as we've seen, I feel like that particular set piece feels a little bit, I don't want to say tired, but just a little bit stale. I feel like we've seen that similar Spider-Man action with him having webs extended in both directions, trying to pull something together. But that's a small criticism. There was that. And then the thing that I kind of alluded to in the last topic is I'm a little bit worried about them being able to balance 3 different villains this time around, because we haven't even seen the Tinkerer yet. And from a purely speculative position, I would not be surprised to find out the Tinkerer is the person manufacturing all of the technology for the villains. I mean, big revelation there, I'm sure, but he's that's what he does in the comic books, is build that stuff. It kind of looks like Michael Keaton might be developing it by the trailers, but I'm not sure. But I don't even know who they cast for the Tinkerer, but I really like what I saw. It probably showed way too much, and it's kind of like, if I'm going to keep bitching about it, I probably shouldn't keep watching trailers, but I do anyway, so, fool me once kind of thing. I think it's on me at this point. If I don't want to know, I probably shouldn't watch. But, yeah, I dug it. Just showed too much.
Well, Kevin, I got a specific question for you. First, what were your thoughts on the trailer? That's the first thing. And second, what do you think about everybody that's saying, is it Spider-Man Homecoming or Iron Man 4?
Good point.
This is the thing. First of all, I love the trailer. I'm kind of on Jeremy's side, where I'm hoping they didn't show too much. For all we know, everything we saw could have been the first act of the movie. I don't think it is, but just to say that. And, Jeremy, to answer your question, the actor that's playing the Tinkerer is Michael Chernus. I don't know if you watch Orange is the New Black, but he's Piper's brother, the kind of hippie, weed-smoking guy or whatever. Yeah, that's the Tinkerer.
Okay.
So, but to go on to, is this Iron Man 4 or is this whatever? A lot of times, these people that make these comments or whatever, whether it be fanboys or not, I just look at them and shake my head. Because this is exactly what people have been complaining about and what they've been asking for. So let's look at the Netflix Marvel series. You have all this stuff going on in the city, and the other heroes have not shown up to help each other yet. So in the Defenders that's coming, obviously they'll probably be fighting a hand and they'll show up and help each other. Finally, in the MCU, somebody has a problem and somebody actually shows up to help them, and people want to get up in arms about it. This
Yep.
is exactly what they do in comic books damn near in every issue. If there's a big problem going on and the ferry in New York is splitting and the shadow from Avengers Tower is over that ferry and Iron Man doesn't show up, it's crap. I'm sorry. He's supposed to be there, and he needs to be there. Not to mention he went and got Spider-Man and put him in his position. And also, like I said, the ferry is splitting in the shadow of Avengers Tower. The tower is right there in New York. This is how it's supposed to be. And this is exactly what should be going on. So I think we're going to start to see more stuff like this. Even just looking at the Falcon cameo in Ant-Man. Had Ant-Man went to break into that base to get that technology for Hank Pym and not ran into somebody out there, that would be crap to me.
Yeah,
So
I can see from.
So we can allude to the breaking the fourth wall in Deadpool, It seems like nobody's at home made a profit, have enough money to put any of the X-Men in this movie.
Exactly.
And
so
it does.
I think.
Go ahead, Kevin. Sorry.
I was going to say I just think that it's a null complaint, and I don't think Tony Stark is going to be in this movie as much as people think he is. And also, by the way, that's his mentor. He's supposed to be there. It would be completely weird if Tony Stark went and got this kid from Queens, gave him this suit, and just let him run around New York and not show up and help him. Oh, and by the way, by him showing up, he's actually kind of shielding him from the Sokovia Accords, by the way. Because technically, he probably shouldn't be doing what he's doing. If Iron Man shows up and says, I got this kid, don't worry about it, I got this, that keeps Thunderbolt Ross and the government off Spider-Man's ass. But hey.
I never thought about it that way. I never thought about it that way.
No, that's a lot of really on point analysis to get to that. I mean, it didn't even cross my mind either. Just a devil's advocate, because it makes perfect sense from a story perspective. But then I think what everybody was surprised. Do you think that it shows a lack of confidence in Spider-Man as a solo film or as a solo player because of how much they're having to showcase? Because even if everything you said was true, they still wouldn't have to have Tony featured so heavily in the trailer. So do you think backing out of the story of it, that from a marketing perspective or from a studio perspective, that it might show that they're worried that Spider-Man alone won't sell like a Spider-Man that's attached to the
Not
MCU?
at all. Not at all.
I don't think it. Go ahead, Kevin.
I think that when you have Robert Downey Jr., which is one of the most sought after actors in the world at this point, who's making $40 million per picture and he's doing all this and that or whatever, I think you have to showcase him because he is the star of the MCU. Whether we agree with it or not, whether we like his character or not, I think that's just that old school Hollywood marketing. Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and all those guys were able to pull off films that made money without that big star that's in it. This is the thing. The only star that has to be in a trailer is Spider-Man for it to work.
Right.
He's the only one that has to be there for it to work. But I'm picking up what you're putting down, and I just think it's one of those things where it's like, no, we got a beloved character here that's in this movie. We need to show him so people can see it's Tony Stark and it's connected to the MCU. And you got to remember this also, too. We live in a confusing time where, for us, you tell us what property it is, we can tell you what studio owns it and what character they do and don't have. The general public can't do that. So in order for them to say, this isn't just another Spider-Man film where we're rebooting and it has nothing to do with the MCU. You put the most recognizable character from the MCU in and it says, oh, this is tied in with Marvel. Because remember, all those other studios that have Marvel films, the little Marvel thing with the flickering comic book pages goes before those, but they're not part of the MCU. So I think Iron Man's a tie-in. But I understand what you're saying, though.
Yeah, for sure. I do think there's validity to that, to that concern. But at the same time, I agree with you 100%. It wouldn't make sense to have a marquee star in a movie and not showcase them. It would be like just giving anybody to be the Vulture and then keeping their mask on in the whole trailer. They're not gonna. They're just not gonna do that. So I totally agree with you.
I would say the thing I have about that is, like Kevin was saying, like we both agree that you have to showcase the star.
Yeah.
To get tickets to sell, we're going to go see Spider-Man Homecoming anyway. But you have to think about the demographics that you want to sell. You have to think about the different demographics that you want to put forward, or who you want to come see the movie. So for those real deal, what's the word I'm looking for? For those real deal Robert Downey Jr. fans, once you show his face, that demographic that really doesn't care about Spider-Man going to see this movie.
Yep.
That's more tickets. There's more tickets right there. So that's another thing that these studios are doing. Put the stars in the trailer so that we can sell tickets to the folks who really don't care about the initial property of what we're doing.